Welcome to Disrupting Web3. My co-host, but this time guest today is Cessiah Lopez. I said it right?
Correct. Yeah.
Good.
Perfect.
She got me on it. Made sure I said it right. Trust me, took me a few takes from the past, but we're locked in. Anyway, it's a pleasure to have you on, Cessiah. How are you today?
Thanks. I'm feeling good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited about starting this series about disrupting Web3 with you. I am.
Yeah, me too. I think it's important that we cover these type of topics for sure.
All right, so let's get down to it because I want people to know who you are, Cessiah, and what makes you tick.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about your Web3 story, your origin story, your hero arc story about how you got into this world that is Web3. Okay,
so I feel as if every good story lately starts off with when I was in lockdown. So I'm going to start off with that. So when I was in lockdown, I was basically isolating, and around that time, my younger sibling, who is 13 years old, but she's been diagnosed with global late development. She's nonverbal, autistic, and very much needs constant care. She had a massive health scare at that time. And my way of coping with it, which is probably not very healthy, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to challenge myself to come up with a business idea that combines my unhealthy obsession with sneakers and me wanting to just create art. And I was scrolling through TikTok and there was a massive resin craze happening on there. And I thought, well, I haven't seen this on Instagram, so maybe I can bring this over to Instagram. And quickly just went through a couple of like Google searches to see how I can incorporate shoes in like physical art pieces that uses resin, and very quickly came up with the idea of showcased art. And as soon as I got out of that isolation, my order from Amazon came. I went to the kitchen, got on like my knees and started just doing this crazy like sample pieces for this artwork that I had envisioned in my mind. And very quickly, I turned it into a 4-figure business in less than 6 months. I think it was actually around in 3 months, it turned into a 4-figure business.
Wow.
And yeah, it was amazing because it was the first time that I had tapped into my entrepreneurial journey where that demand for something just was there. I really just got my target audience right. And
how'd you do that? Like, how did you get it right? Like, how did you get that target audience right in terms of?
I think I just got lucky because around that time I was still doing my master's in international trade law, and I was heavily connected with a basketball team. And it's almost inevitable that when you know the basketball team, you know people who are also obsessed with sneakers. And so I had already had that following of people who were interested in shoes in general. So when I had posted these sample pieces that I made, people were just like, yo, these are crazy. Like, are you going to make more? And when I kept getting those questions and people were actually like wanting to buy the sample pieces that I had intended to just be free and just for me, I just created an Instagram page straight away. And I knew that there was potential for it to also be scalable. So I was very intentional about the way I took the pictures as well. I have no like photography skills at all. I just use iPhone. And I actually so if you see my Instagram page, it's literally just like a white background on those pieces of art. It's actually a onesie, like a fluffy onesie that was just like all white. And I would just like use that as a way as like as a basis for my artwork.
Yeah.
And yeah, just got super lucky with timing, I think. And I then started to see NFTs popping up on my timeline on Twitter. And just an initial Google search, I just saw technology and then I saw art and I was like, this is amazing. This could be where I can take resin art to the next level. Because I was just like, resin has a bad rep for just being considered arts and crafts. But the way I was utilizing it and the way that I was interpreting that type of artwork as a functional art piece, that not only is it art decor, but you could actually just use it as an ashtray, as a coaster, as a charger, or whatever. I realized I could probably take resin to the next level with NFTs. And then as we do, just went through this rabbit hole that just went further and further and further down. So throughout August, I spent that whole month barely sleeping, just like researching as much as I can, really understanding the technology behind it and the Web3 principles that make this such a magical place for a lot of us, especially for creators as well. And by September, I had minted my first NFT that tethered the physical art piece to my NFT. And literally, I didn't think it was going to sell because I had put it up as like a 7-day like auction thing.
Yes.
And on the 7th day, it just like sold. And I was like, I've literally just 10x'd how much I would normally sell this physical art piece for.
Wow.
Just because of the NFT aspect to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn,
I want to. I know, world changing, right?
Keep doing it.
But the world moves very fast and it changes very fast, right? So that instance at that moment, it was the boom, if you will, of the Web3 NFT craze. I guess we're in winter right now because everybody's like, it's just a different environment right now. I read this book about entrepreneurship. Guy Wachowski, I think that's his name, and he says like there are two different modes when it comes to entrepreneurship. There is the microscope when everybody just looks at everything in detail. Everything has to be exactly right. You have to go exactly according to the plan. Nothing different against the status quo. Those are very like the tight times. And then there are telescopes when you look and just see their big vision as an entrepreneur, how you want to change the world, how you want to have impact. And he said, when it's a telescope world, which it was a telescope world at that time, we're not talking about that long ago, like a year ago, the world is full of stars. When it's a microscopic world, everybody just finds the microscopic flaws in everything. And I feel like we kind of moved to a balance to where we are now. What do you see as the future of Web3? I have my thoughts. I believe this is temporary, but I want to get your thoughts about where that lies and what you think about the future of Web3.
So I'm just going to look at it from one perspective for now, because I think Web3 has various different aspects that we can filter out what those aspects will look like as far as their own individual futures. Right. But for me, as just from my understanding of Web3 and how useful it can be and how life-changing it can be, I believe that the future of Web3 will actually be seen in emerging markets. I think that we are so privileged in the West in how we live our lives that we forget how privileged we are to just have basic technologies within our hands and how easily accessible they are for us. But I think about in the Philippines, the work that I've done with the Philippine Embassy for the trade of investment and trade department, I see massive potentials in emerging markets just really being the place where this technology can be life-changing for people on the ground level. As in, is there a way that we can incorporate NFTs with farmers, for example, right? Like, is there a way that we can leverage blockchain technology to create better governance in general? Not even corporate governance, just the way that countries like the Philippines are governed on that scale, right? And I've had these conversations with a couple of people in the cohort that I'm in now, and the same issues kind of exist throughout other emerging markets. Not to generalize, obviously, because different countries have their own problems, but in Malawi, for example, they have land and real estate issues where no one really knows who the land belongs to, right? Blockchain technology can help with that. When you provide these decentralized grids, for example, that you can access on the blockchain in some way or capacity. I wouldn't know. I don't have any technical building abilities at all, but I know from the work that I've done with the real estate NFT marketplace that I helped co-found last year, that there is a massive way that we can actually make this space, particularly real estate, a lot more transparent and a lot more equitable. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, it's we're in this space right now when a lot of people don't understand this technology, of course, because it's a new emerging technology, and it doesn't help when you have things like FTX and all these folks that are abusing the amount of trust that was given to them. How do you navigate in this environment when you have, I'd say, the microscopes, people looking now and they're like, all right, they will try to find the flaw in everything based upon the bad actors that obviously have a lot of influence. How how do you navigate this environment when people are telling you like, well, you do all that crazy Web3 stuff. Aren't those just full of people that are just like FTX people? Because that's all people think FTX, people think blockchain, unfortunately, Web3, unless you're like us, true believers on the inside. That's what they hear. That's what they hear from the media. That's all they consume. What is it that you do to make sure that they can understand the full narrative?
So a lot of the work that I've done in this space has actually been to fill in that disconnect, that gap of lack of knowledge and lack of accurate knowledge about the space. And so right now, at the beginning of the year, I published an ebook called NFTs for Newbies that provided visual walkthroughs of what NFTs are, why they're important, their use cases in real life, how to mint on 2 blockchains I use, Ethereum and Solana, and how that might differ to when you would just buy it off of secondary, for example. And so I think, to answer your first question, when it comes to how do we navigate that space, I think people like us have a massive, almost fiduciary duty to be the ones to tell people, look, it's more than what the media is showing us. It's more than just people trying to get lucky, gambling their money away and trying to see if they can 10x the next day, right?
Right.
And really showing them that this technology can actually help change people's lives. And that depends on what we're building in the space. And the second question is, like, what am I doing?
Before you get to the second question, don't forget it, please. I want to, because I think you hit a really mic drop point. If we want to help change the world for better, we need builders in the space that are intentional and care about the things that you and I care about, that actually care about equity, that actually care about transparency. You know, you can do both and make money. Like these two things aren't mutually exclusive,
100%.
right?
100%.
But having builders that are a part of that is really, really, really important as we're building the new building blocks for how we're going to connect. This is not solely about trading assets. That's part of the technology, but it's really about a better way to transact and connect the world without barriers in between. You know, we have an artist from Nigeria that it makes a big difference to him. He goes on, he has sells a few pieces. It's transformative for his life. And the way we can transact without banking in the middle makes a big difference in his world. As you talk about emerging markets, which is where most of the opportunity is.
Right.
So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, it's a good segue to my second point, because so the work that I'm doing right now with Entrepreneur First. So Entrepreneur First is essentially an incubator program, but they incubate people before they have an idea for what startup they want to build. So right now we're currently exploring. Sorry, just give me a second. Let me just turn this on. They have like a time.
Yeah, your light went out on us. That's all right. We'll get post this edit right here, you guys. We'll pick it back up. So.
Yeah, so what I'm currently exploring right now is actually surrounding the onboarding process. So I genuinely believe that if we don't get the onboarding process correct with Web3, there are so many opportunities that will be lost in the next bull run, number one. And two, that onboarding process is incredibly important when it comes to actually educating people about what else is there to Web3 besides NFTs, besides apes, besides DeFi protocols and all of these cryptocurrencies that's just going further and further down into the ground. So I think people building in this space, whether that's a Web3 company that they started or whether that's on a consultancy basis, they need to really think about how they are welcoming people into this space. And if they're doing it in a way that only educates them in regards to what they're building, or if it's educating them holistically, you know? Because I think if you're just here to show your projects and get people onboarded based on what you're building, it's number one, it's not a scalable business to have in the first place. But second, those people that you're onboarding, they're not going to stay. There is a massive visibility issue in Web3. And because there's a massive visibility issue, there's also a retention problem. And that's where I'm trying to come in and potentially fix that.
I mean, I think that's right on point. It really is. It's I mean, our goal is we try to figure out how do we meet people where they are and make the experience engaging, make it entertaining if you can, and then people are able to get educated. But definitely making sure that customer support in terms of actually helping people, even if it doesn't help your product, is important. First of all, it will grow the ecosystem. Second of all, it's actually a good business anyway to do that, right? But this sector of Web3 right now is that like people like on OpenSea and a lot of these other places, it's just like they don't provide any type of walkthrough support. They say figure it out on your own, as if that is a good model for future development. And I think it's a great opportunity for people like us, but that's what they do. And what they don't know, and maybe they do and don't care, is that it turns off a lot of people because they just don't want to be involved in trying to figure out all the steps instead of making it easy for them to get involved.
Yeah,
and
there are too many barriers. And when there are too many barriers, you can't, it's almost impossible. It's like, okay, one barrier, okay, we can get over that because you're willing, you're committed.
Yep.
Second one is like, okay, this is getting a bit annoying, and by the third, you've lost them.
You're not.
And it's a shame because there might be someone from like an investment banking background. There might be someone from a legal background. There might be someone who really understands how to navigate the political landscape of certain countries that not everyone has a niche understanding of. Like, these people can really be valuable to this space as far as providing unique perspectives and unique insights, but we're losing them. And we don't know where we're losing them, but it literally is just, this is already a very complicated space. And if we make the learning process even more complicated, it's not going to look good as far as mass adoption.
All right, so I'm going to ask you one question, then we'll go to like a rapid round here.
Okay.
What's your committee of three in Web3? Like the three people that are going to be down in your team. Ooh. Tell me why too for each one. Your committee of three for Web3.
Three? Well, what do you mean?
Your committee of three for Web3. It could be the people that you want to advise you, people that you want there to build with you, the people that you, even if they're not Web3, but you want to, they're there for moral and supportive advice. Who are these people and why?
So number one on the list would be Deshaun Ballard. He's an ex Metaplex, so he was a senior product manager for Metaplex. He is actually the first person who bought my NFT, and this guy builds like crazy. He understands the ecosystem way more than I could ever, just from a developer standpoint, but also on a community level. He's one of the few people actually who got me interested in investing on one artist in a space, and not just the NFT project collections that we see often, because he really sees in the value of what this space could do for individual artists. We don't often see how this space is really changing people's lives, as in taking them from poverty to like owning houses and owning cars, And he's one of the first people to actually get me to really understand the power in it. So I'll definitely have Day on my team.
It's so important for you to go to the next one, because and I'm saying collectively, we haven't lost it, but collectively, people have lost the meaning of how we got into the space. It was about empowering creators, about helping expand opportunities for them. Because creators already create so much value, but they didn't get the equity that they deserved, right? We just enjoy these things and we've got them for free instead of rewarding the creatives for what they brought us. And this is an opportunity to really not only give back to them, but it also gives more to us. Like when the creator economy goes up, there's more opportunities, period. So I think people got lost in the, let's figure out how to flip a project, instead of, how do we actually build a sustainable ecosystem that creates a better creative economy? So I think that's right on point.
Yeah, and he's definitely one of those people that understand that, The second person would be Karima. I believe she's Karima Digital on Twitter. She is amazing. Like, she knows the space from like a marketing strategies perspective. And she was the first one to actually get me a gig as a Web3 consultant for an A16Z backed Web3 startup. Working with her was such a pleasure that we're actually in talking stages about building potentially a newsletter that combines different ways to target a specific market. So we essentially want to be like the complex, highest novelty, hype beast of Web3 newsletters, where its content is tailored for the culture. Because I think there are a lot of contents out there that's not being targeted more specifically and not being tailored to communities that can really benefit from it.
Agreed.
There is I believe that potentially our startup, I'm going to say that there's a company called Neon Money Club. I think you'd really like them actually.
What are they
And
called?
they're essentially Neon Money Club.
Neon Money Club. Okay.
Yeah. So they make investments cool. Like
Okay. That sounds
they
awesome.
they yeah, they frame their language, with like the current trends right now, where they essentially make the investment like lit is like the terms that
Right.
they use. So it's very much the language is tailored towards like the younger generation and people like us who
What's the name of the
understand
site
the
again? I gotta
culture.
write this down now.
Neon Money Club.
Neon Money Club. I'm not gonna forget that. That
Yeah,
sounds good. Okay.
they're
No,
awesome.
that's
They're doing really cool stuff.
okay. All right. So rapid fire,
Um,
then we'll continue our part two. So,
okay.
all right. What outsiders misunderstand, I want you just to finish these sentences and just finish off at the end with just finish it off.
Mhm.
Uh, what outsiders misunderstand most about Web3 is?
That it's not just pixel art or bored apes.
Yeah. All right.
Just leave it at that.
What insiders of Web3 get wrong the most?
What insiders of Web3 get wrong the most
Yes, as a collective.
is that they're building for each other and not for people who can really benefit from it.
Preach. That should be a mic drop moment. All right. The best way to create impact in Web3 is?
To focus on education.
The future of disruption that will happen in Web3 is?
The future of disruption that will happen in Web3. Dude, this is a tough one. You can't rapid fire this question.
All right, I'll give you a couple sentences. Let's go.
This is hard.
Supposed to be hard.
Its application towards emerging markets.
There you go. See, you did it. You did it. Cessiah Lopez, pleasure getting to know you, and definitely we're gonna disrupt together.
We will.
Let's do it.
100%. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. All right, so I think I'd like to have you on. We'll just do another one after this. That's clip. We'll end that one.
Okay.
Before I get to that, I do want to tell you. I want to ask you one question that's not necessarily. I might ask it on the record. What do you consider your superpower, though? What's your superpower?
My ADHD.
You have ADHD too? Did you tell me that? You told me that?
Yeah.
Did you tell me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have ADHD, so I forgot. But
this is so on brand for us.
oh my God. We definitely got to use that clip now because that's like, I got to tell me that.
That is so funny. Oh my God.
Oh man, that was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Because I did. I'm like, oh shit, you did tell me. Okay. All right. Well, cool. Well, look, we're talking about. Go ahead. What are you doing?
That's cute. Yeah, I will say my superpower is my ADHD. I never thought it was. I used to. Okay, this is the first time I'm probably admitting this, but I used to genuinely cry about it because prior to me, I was late diagnosed. I've only been diagnosed, I think, last year, and it was a pivotal moment for me because I realized, okay, cool. So the way I've been dealing with things, the way I'm perceived to not be very emotional and more logical. My mom says that I think too much like a man because I'm never emotional about stuff. I'm very logical about things. And finally having that diagnosis allowed me to really accept that, okay, cool, it's not a problem with me. It's just I think differently to most people.
Yeah. And maybe you're just boring. Sorry, the other people that don't get ADHD in our circle. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Not really.
they it's really difficult for people to understand us though. Like
it very much is.
And it's weird because I find that ADHD people are drawn to other ADHD people.
Which is why we're drawn to each other. That's funny. That's hilarious.
But then it's like you have that and then just communication is terrible. Because ADHD people are known for being bad.
Yeah, we are because we're like, why didn't you understand that?
We don't need to be.
Yeah, we don't mean to be. Look, we said it. Like, why didn't you understand it? I kind of said it. I mean, I have to tell you directly. Like, they're like, yeah. Oh, well, I thought you'd understand.
Yeah, or like, do you ever get when someone asks you a question and you don't get why they're asking that question? So you're like, can you ask that in like a different way?
Yes.
And then they're just like, what do you mean? I'm asking exactly how I want. And you're like, no, because you're not giving me any context to the question.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we think that, like, we do think
It's
differently.
terrible.
No, it's terrible and it's great, but people do think that we're insensitive sometimes when we're not. They think we're not paying attention when we just can't. Like, it's the weirdest ADHD. I think people get it misunderstood. They think, okay, so that means you can never focus. Not all the time. It sometimes means the opposite. It means we so hyper focus on things that we don't see this other shit that you don't.
I literally hyper focus on Web3 for a month.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do? A normal person would be like, no, like every day for a month. This was all I was doing. It was all about learning anything and everything. Terrible. Obsession.
Yeah, but then you got people, everyone that you're close to, your loved one, your family, your mom, and they're like, what? But you're not like, we're not normal, and that's kind of a good thing, right? Because it's like, yeah. And I think I've told you my story. This is probably how we talked about it, right? When my teachers, told me that I'm basically dumb. No, they were they were dumb for saying that. They just didn't understand that thinking differently, not being great at taking written exams doesn't mean you don't have abilities. It just means you think differently, literally. And that's been a benefit for, I think that's why we can get this space so well, Cessiah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, especially when I have my mentors in the legal field, as well as legal people that I'm connecting with now, they sit down with me and they're like, you're never going to practice law, right? And I know exactly what they mean by that, because the law is very much how well can you follow rules? How well can you apply this like black letter law that's existed for years and years into this whatever issue people have? And I'm just like, I'm the person that asks why this black letter law exists and why we can't change it.
Exactly.
And why we can't circumvent it to help other people. Or benefit other people, actually. But because with me, I think, I'm not sure if it was Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, but one of them said that the best people to hire are lazy people, because they'll always find a way to do that job better in the shortest amount of time, or in the quickest way possible.
Yeah, that yes, and he's talking about lazy people in terms of people that think very efficiently, not that don't do the work, but like you, they're like, okay, right. Why the fuck are we doing 10 steps when it can be done in one? Like it's like
exactly
right, like it's
literally gets me so bad. It's when you have a logical thinking, because you've already thought of like the 5 steps required to do that thing. But then someone comes in and they're like, what if we do this? But then it's 5 more steps extra. And you're like, no. If it's more steps, it's wrong.
No, I'm like, if it's more steps, you're doing something wrong. I have another way of talking about this in Web3 or anything. Because the problem with Web3 too is that people like to tell how smart they are. So they explain things in a way that nobody can fucking understand what they're saying. Right. So it's like, right. And then I'm like, and that tells me one of two things. You're either an asshole or you really don't understand things the way you say you do. Because if you do, if you really understand something, you could explain it in a way that anybody that's not in your space can at least relate to it. And if you're not willing to do that, you're being also lazy in your brain when you're not willing to figure out, let me figure out where someone else is versus where I'm at.
And I think that's why that NFTs for Newbies ebook was so pivotal for me, because it took me 2 weeks to put that together. I had a help from a friend who's been way more experienced and has spent a lot more time in this space than I have, just to kind of validate and make sure that the information I'm putting on there's something in there for everyone. It's not just for newbies, that even if you've been trading in NFTs for years, you can still learn something new. And that was really important, because I was able to break down what people would normally find on the internet in maybe 20 different pages, or like 3 different YouTube videos that last 20 minutes long. Being able to consolidate so many information into I consolidated like 5 years of Web3 cryptocurrency NFTs experience between my friend and I into like less than 50 pages. And they were all visual. Most of them are visual walkthroughs.
Right.
That's helpful. And it's crazy because I think there was something as well that I recently read of how important it actually is to cater for people like us.
Yes.
Because there's way more people who are neurodivergent as well.
Yes.
That when you don't tailor your website, or okay, here it is. It says 26% of the US population is living with some type of disability. That's over 1 in 4 people who could become frustrated and leave if they can't easily use your website or app. Accessibility is no longer an option and is essential to good design. So
Wow.
if you don't actually
Another
have people
drop.
like us, it's awesome. It's actually an article, I think. But yeah, if you don't cater to people like us, you lose so many customers, and you lose so many people that are the right people for you to target. But because you haven't designed or facilitated your app or service or whatever it may be to have people like us going through the entire process more easily,
right,
so that you don't lose us at the first instance of like distraction or hard barriers.
That is so fascinating. That is so fascinating you said it like that. And I never thought about it like that with ADHD. You helped me answer why you see it as a superpower, because it is hard at first, especially when the traditional way we're taught in school is to, you have to do these things, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
You have to, everything's presented inside the damn box. I'm like, why the hell is there? And of course, ADD is like, why do we have a box? Question. Like, I was like,
exactly.
Like, and they're like, well, no, because there is. And you're like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why? And then
so
people get
I
mad at me.
I actually researched the issue of standardized testing in educational systems, right? And it's one of the biggest issues why, at least for teachers here in the UK, it's one of the major reasons why morale for teachers is at an all-time low for 25 years. Like the first time in 25 years, teachers don't want to teach.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are feeling as if they're just here to breed students to pass or fail, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's no way to tailor their teaching so that I can actually have individual students in their classes engrossed in learning.
Yeah.
And so you'd find this interesting. So I actually think the biggest solution, maybe I'll say one of the best solutions that I think could tackle the issue of standardized testing in schools is AI. So imagine a way where you do a text prompt. So pretty similar to DALL-E, where you do a text prompt and then it generates that into like a 3D version of whatever the text prompt was. So this takes us, you'll understand this, it takes us from black and white letters to then a visual straight away.
Yes. That's fire. That's fire. We think along the same, we're like twins or something. We think along the same route, right? Because it's like, we have to introduce
never the same route.
Yeah, we have to introduce creative thinking to students early on. We've had this generation that's taught students that playing video games is bad, doing all this stuff is bad. Doing it without intention probably is bad because it'll just take you through an endless loop. But understanding how the creative economy is really just going to grow more, right? And if you understand how to teach people to think critically, it is not that standardized testing has a place. Doing things 1, 2, 3, 4. We have to sometimes do step 1, 2, 3. It's necessary. It's a part, but it's a very one-dimensional way of thinking and learning that we have to expand upon. Period. And this is why I think it's so important to introduce like this creative style thinking and why Web3 is such a phenomenal opportunity. And it's very hard to explain. Like I try to tell my dad, I love my dad. My dad is very much a 1, 2, 3 logical thinker. Like unless you can show him, and again, that serves him well. And that side that he trained me at helps me when I go all over the place because I always want to see things like from top vision. He helps me say, well, where do you start from 1, 2, 3, which is necessary. But however, I found that people that think that way, it's very hard for them to see the creative side. And then so learning to really, I think, appreciate both sides of this, because sometimes I'm frustrated by those people too. But I really appreciate it.
That's because that's what they've been used to. You know, that's all they know. They don't know any other option. And I think educational institutions, especially the likes of Cambridge and Oxford, have a tendency to really do that. They think that for you to have the merit of being in a prestigious school like that, you have to learn in the same way that the other greats have come through. And it's just not the case. You can make a PhD fun. And so I'm in this cohort and there's 120 of us and a lot of them are PhD people and they're so intelligent, so just a caliber in their own right? But they're like, yeah, PhD was like one of the worst experiences of my life. And I'm thinking, how is that? You're so smart. The work you've done is incredible. Someone can run with that study and change the world if they really wanted to. But the experience of you having to do that has put you off academia in such a way that you're just exhausted after. I'm like, there has to be a better way. And I do think Web3 can facilitate with education.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Einstein's one of my favorite. Then we'll get ready to wrap up here. I think we're going to call this episode ADHD Web3. I think we're just going to call it that, right? It fits that. But I think Einstein had ADHD before we knew what it was. And this is why I say that, right? So he learned to think differently. You listen to his quotes. He said, you won't resolve issues with the same level of thinking that created them. And you think about how he came up with the theory of relativity. Here's how he did it. I'm gonna get real right to it. Mm-hmm. You know, he everybody else was rooted in the in Newton's laws, which was what everyone knew. So everyone was trying to look for a constant in front of that kind of formula. And then he just said over and over again, once he kind of got stuck, he said, why does there have to be a constant? And that was how he solved it. And this is what I want everybody to take away. There doesn't have to be a constant. But because you don't understand Web3 doesn't mean it doesn't have value. Mm-hmm. Seek to understand it. We want to help you. This is why we're starting Disrupting Web3 to help empower you. And Cessiah Lopez, it's an honor to work with you. We look forward to building together. It's good to have you on.